Welcome to Tech Space, a podcast for the most interesting news and technology. I'm Derek Musso, along with co-hosts Rodney Brazil, Jackie Dana, and Lisa McKnight. In today's episode, our main story discusses the details behind the Internal Revenue Service's facial recognition plans. We'll discuss this somewhat underreported story. Then we'll have our roundup of recent tech stories we think also deserves your attention. But before we get started, just a quick note from our sponsor. This podcast is brought to you by Namecheap. Namecheap is the world's second largest domain registrar and a top web hosting provider. Namecheap offers a wide range of products and services to help launch a website you could scale and grow. Visit Namecheap.com to learn how you could make more online for less. With everything going on in the world at the end of last year, there was some important news quietly coming from the Internal Revenue Service. Towards the end of 2021, the IRS decided future plans to require everyone who logs into their online system to agree to facial recognition as a form of identity verification. Beginning this summer, anyone who wants to access the IRS website to pay their taxes, view their balance, or otherwise interact with the agency online will need to create an account with third-party provider ID.me. This in turn will require users to submit bills or other documents such as photo ID, driver's license, or passport to prove their identity, as well as agree to a live on-camera video chat. How come this isn't a bigger news story? Rodney and Jackie are here with me. Has anyone gotten a glimpse into how this process works?
Yes, the public wasn't aware of this dramatic change until online security expert Brian Krebs recently sounded the alarm in a story that was then picked up by Gizmodo and just the other day, Wired. I'm sure the story could gain more momentum as we get deeper into tax season here in America. But as Krebs explained, not only is the process invasive, but it is very difficult and time consuming. He said about the process, and I quote, stepping away from one part of the many step application process for a little more than 5 minutes necessitated another login and then the resubmission of documents I'd previously uploaded.
Okay, so Jackie, assuming one completes the sign-up process, then what?
Once a user uploads all of their documents, the system will then attempt to verify the user's identity by comparing the photo on the physical document to the live selfie. Then the final step involves speaking on camera to a live agent who will initiate a video call to verify their identity.
Of course, this has to be concerning to privacy watchdogs. Is the IRS asking Americans to do everything through this third party ID.me, even payments?
Well, in a statement to Gizmodo, the IRS reiterated that taxpayers won't need the third party ID.me service to pay or file taxes, but will need to use the identity verification process to access online tools such as checking account balances or obtaining transcripts. And yeah, needless to say, this process has sparked concerns among privacy advocates. SC Media, an online cybersecurity publication, suggests that by using ID.me as the default option, quote, the IRS is pushing potentially millions of taxpayers into using a risky technology with a spotty track record, one that isn't even owned by the government, unquote. And Kately Seeley George of Fight for the Future told SC Media that the IRS identity verification program represents, quote, a massive expansion of the federal government using facial recognition on the public at large, unquote.
Rodney, in a recent article, our friends at Electronic Frontier Foundation explained some of the concerns about face matching technology. There's been a number of studies that show these systems are less reliable when applied to women or people of color. In one example, EFF cites a case in which women of color were misidentified 40 times more often than white men.
Yes, that's right. And also interesting to note that EFF points out that the technology has even been used to attempt to analyze someone's emotions. And it's almost like that movie Minority Report. The US Department of Homeland Security implemented fast technology in hopes it could detect malintent among people in airports and border crossings. Despite the fact they note that the technology has been used to falsely identify individuals and then charge them with crimes.
Clearly sounds like bad news for those concerned that technology has taken away more of their privacy. But Jackie, this isn't over yet, right?
Not yet, anyway, Derek. The good news is that the IRS facial recognition plans may not be a done deal. Senate Finance Chair Ron Wyden says he intends to look into the matter. On January 20th, in fact, he tweeted, quote, "I'm very disturbed that Americans may have to submit to a facial recognition system, wait on hold for hours, or both, to access personal data on the IRS website. While e-filing remains unaffected, I'm pushing the IRS for greater transparency on this plan," unquote.
Next up, it's the segment we call In Other News. Lisa and Rodney have a few handpicked stories we've had our eyes on. Lisa, we've all become more and more familiar with QR codes. They seem to be everywhere now.
Yes, when legitimately used for tickets, purchases, promotions, and payments, QR codes are hugely useful and have become even more so during the pandemic because they reduce the need for touching all those payment cards.
Right. So I'm sure, like in everything during the pandemic and with technology in our post-pandemic world, now criminals are increasingly using the technology for scams, right?
Correct. Because of this increased uptake, the temptation for scammers to fiddle with the QR image is also on the rise. The FBI is warning mobile users to, especially when out and about, avoid scanning QR codes used in ambient advertising, where you might see a sticker on a bench or in a venue, for example. FBI advice is not to scan it, or you might become a victim of a password fraud, payments theft, or even a cryptocurrency scam, so be aware.
In other news, these crazy kids these days won't stop launching DDoS attacks against their schools. For those who don't know, a DDoS, or a distributed denial of service attack, is when someone uses a botnet or a group of PCs to overwhelm a system with fake traffic, thus causing speed or access issues for users.
Tech Radar reports that kids, some as young as 9, know how to launch a DDoS attack. The UK National Cybercrime Agency wants to educate kids about the consequences. During the pandemic and the subsequent rise in homeschooling, DDoS attacks launched by students against their school networks, websites, and other services rose sharply.
Okay, so keep an eye on your kids. All right, guys, before we go, I just wanted to talk about Apple AirTags for a few minutes. I think in the media, they've been mostly covering the security risks for people around Apple AirTags and stalkers using them and people using them for nefarious reasons. But there's also clever ways that people are using them. I watched a YouTube video of a guy who had a farm that was getting things stolen from it, and he decided to hide a few AirTags in equipment and leave it out. And lo and behold, it brought him right to his neighbor, who was the one that was actually stealing his stuff.
Well, what's interesting, there was a story about a woman who put an active AirTag into a box when she was moving. And when her stuff didn't show up, like moving cross country kind of thing. And she called them and said, "What's the holdup?" And they said, "Oh, your stuff is still, 800 miles away." And she's like, "Actually, it's right here in town. Do you think I could get it?" And it's like, that's kind of brilliant because,
Hmm.
I mean, every single person I think that has moved cross country using professional movers has had some issue with their stuff going missing or not being delivered when they say they will. And if you were tracking it with an AirTag.
Jackie, what's
Yeah.
the range on those things? Because I was just thinking if you were traveling and you were flying, you could put it in your suitcase. And then if they lost your suitcase, you'd know where it went.
I mean, I think that the way it works is they have to be in range of somebody with an Apple device, because I think what it does is it would ping your iPhone, and then it would ping the system, and then it would tell me it's in California. But if it's in the middle of nowhere and there's nobody there with an Apple device, and I don't know if it's just iPhones or any Apple, then I think it just kind of goes, silent.
Whoever tracks you or sets up the AirTag, if they just turn on to look and see where you are and then turn it off, it won't then you can't necessarily track where it's coming from.
They're basically connecting to every Bluetooth Apple device in the world.
Assuming that you have your Bluetooth on. I actually do like this story, and I thought of that when the AirTags came out. Those things must be like a stalker's best friend. They definitely need like a, and they do have that safety feature where they'll tell you if one's like following you. It's one of those things where you could think of a million good reasons to use something like that, and then for every good reason, you could think of a way that a criminal could probably think of a way to use it too. Rodney, before we wrap the episode, I wanted to ask you about video conference call burnout. By the way, I feel like it's a strange thing when you have a call with someone for the first time if you're supposed to assume you will be on camera or not.
Same here. Yes. I usually ask, are we doing cameras?
Yeah, I'll do that sometimes, or usually I have my camera off and I'll wait to see what the other person is doing. And then if they have it on, I'll flip it on. But if they don't, I'll leave it off.
Yeah. And it's no secret that the last 2 years ushered in a new era of video conferencing, from the increased need for online meetings to virtual concerts and court hearings. Streaming communications are pretty much everywhere now. And communications platform Dialpad recently released the State of Video Conferencing 2022 report with findings from a survey of US businesses and proprietary business intelligence. Key insights show 82.9% of people surveyed do not believe most meetings require video at all.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that. If you're one of those people who have a million calls every day, it could be annoying to always be camera ready.
Well, too many meetings isn't actually the most significant pain point for video conferencing. Audio related issues are the biggest complaint from over 50% of respondents. And this begs the question, if I can't see you, can you hear me? No, really? Derek, you still there?
That's all for this episode, and from me, Derek Musso. Thanks again to my co-hosts Rodney Brazil, Jackie Dana, and Lisa McKnight. Also, special thanks to Anastasia Diachenko and Jamie Long. Rate, subscribe, and tell a friend about TechSpace. For more information about the TechSpace podcast, visit our website, techspace.news. And to read the stories featured in today's show in blog form, and to find links to all the sources referenced in our stories, see the episode description or visit namecheap.com/blog.